Hey guys, my name's Rebecca Green. I'm a divorce real estate expert, but today we're going to take a break from talking about divorce and real estate and finances and houses, and we're going to talk about communication because communication is something that is wildly present in all divorces, either communication or the lack of it. And it's something that I think there's a really simple. So let me tell you a little bit about my personal story. In my story, communication was an issue in my marriage and then flew into the divorce. Of course, if you can't communicate while you're married, having communication patterns while you're divorcing is like literally shooting for the moon. It just is probably not going to happen. A few things we tried that failed were phone calls, FaceTime calls with kids. At one point, we were even trying to use the same attorney and communicate with him. We tried pretty much everything and failed miserably, again, because the problem was longer staying than just the divorce itself. It was just that the two of us were missing on communication. So throughout the divorce process, we actually ended up being assigned a divorce therapist, a co-parenting therapist. That's what it's called. So we had a co-parenting therapist. And in my intro call to her, she said something that was really helpful because she's like, how's the communication? I have two children with their dad, and so I have to communicate with them. We are literally raising children together while not being able to communicate, and it was really difficult. For a majority of the time that we were divorcing, the communication style that we used was not. We did not communicate. We had no communication with the children when they were at each other's houses. We had no communication with each other. They call it, what do they call it? Bilateral parenting, where basically the kids live one life at my house and one life at his house because the idea that we would communicate was too dangerous emotionally for us to do that. It just never was helpful. So finally somebody's like, hey, you've got to just co-parent like this, and you keep the kids safe and you keep the kids safe, and we'll see if we can come back together later. So that's what we were doing until we got this co-parenting therapist. And one of the best pieces of advice that she gave me is she's like, okay, Rebecca, talk to me about your communication with your ex. And I had a really classic issue in the beginning of our divorce where I over communicated. I would send him updates on what they had for breakfast, what they had for lunch, how many shoes were at my house. Do you need swimsuits? I was like trying to do too much, and that caused a problem because he didn't want to hear from me. He didn't care what they ate at my house. He didn't care what shoes they had at my house, and I understand that now, but in the moment, I just thought I was being helpful. All I wanted to do was to have a good relationship, and I thought that was best for the kids. But at the end of the day, what's best for the kids is to have two healthy parents. And if one parent being involved in the other parent's life is creating unhealthiness for whatever reason for that parent, then it's not best. And you just have to keep that in mind, that communication is a two-way road. And you may be like me and think that more communication is better so the kids don't have to eat pizza twice in a row. And the co-parent may be like, doesn't matter. What's important to me is that I don't have to see your name pop up on my phone. So you really have to be careful in communication that you find some middle ground here. And I still personally believe that more communication is better and healthier for the kids. I also still personally believe that now, a year and a half, 2 years down the road from the first separation with my kid's dad, they're fine. There's been multiple days that they've shown up at the house and they're like, oh, we went swimming all day at daddy's house. Now we're going swimming here. Or we had pizza the last 2 days at daddy's house. Now we're having pizza here. And that's hard for the kids. But at the same time, I can look and I can see that it is best in some situations that there's not daily communication between co-parents. It's just part of divorce. Now, when we're talking about communication, one of the best things that the co-parenting therapist told me is she's like, your tone in your communication, Rebecca, it's too happy. It's too much. This person already doesn't like you. He doesn't care if you have emojis or if you're funny or you're cutesy. It is straight business communication. And she's like, the mindset I want you to have is to communicate with this person as if you're communicating with someone at work in an email that you don't know well. Use email verbiage. Hello, so-and-so. Today we are blah, blah, blah. And she had a smart goal for it of like the format that I should have in communicating with my ex. And I'll spare you all of those details, but I really did personally. I needed that specific, clear way to communicate because I was used to communicating. This is what's so weird. I was used to communicating with someone who was my husband. Then he became the person in the world who thought the least of me. And now he's the father of my kids and he still doesn't want to talk to me. So it was like, it's weird to go from having a communication pattern, no matter how good or bad with someone, to having to switch that. And in divorce, you do have to switch your communication pattern with this person because you're not in the same roles anymore. You don't know what's going on in that person's life. And I think that that was something else the co-parenting therapist said, in addition to communicating like you would in a professional email to somebody, just get your point across. Don't say anything extra, short and sweet, shorter is better. Using a tool or a resource like ChatGPT was a game changer for me, because what would happen is I actually created a little section in my ChatGPT where it was like, hey chat, here's all my stuff about divorce. And not only did I give it my full divorce decree once I was divorced, so it could reference like the rules that we had and things as it was giving me advice, I would say, hey, chat, based on all the conversations that you know about my divorce and where we're at and the parts that have been the sticking point, please help me communicate this thought or idea. Please help me communicate that I'd like to take the kids on vacation. And chat would write up a very short, succinct email that I could send my co-parent to keep the conversation less emotional. Or if I got a message from him, I still do this to this day. Copy the message, put it in my ChatGPT. I say what I really want to say to the message, and then ChatGPT writes it in a way that is going to be helpful for moving the relationship forward and communicating in a clear way. So I think that's one of the biggest resources that I have with communication. Something else, and we talk about this quite a bit in some of our other videos, is having an app that you communicate in that's not your normal text messages can help, because I don't know how far you're into this divorce situation, but when I see my co-parent's name on my phone in a text message, I still have a physical reaction, and that's not good. What we're trying to do is get both people healed and protected, and maybe someday I'll be able to get a message and not have all the trauma of the marriage come up, but that's not where I am today. So what we have agreed to is to use a co-parenting app on our phone. So the only communication that ever gets sent is in this co-parenting app. You can send messages, you can do phone calls, you can do FaceTime calls, and we don't communicate other than that. If the kids want to call, they call on the app. And while that's awkward and weird and probably creates its own trauma for the kids that we'll have to work through in the past, I stick by my idea that the most important piece of a divorce communication is that both spouses agree. And if you're not both on the same page with having text messages, phone call access, social media access, and you've got to be really careful that you find some type of an agreement, because the worst thing that can happen is there not to be rules in this, especially as you're going through the divorcing process. One of the best things that you can do is get one of these apps. In most states, text messages don't hold up in court, because you can't really, without doing some super intense research, you can't figure out whose number goes to what. So in these apps, it's like, hey, it's court ordered. They have lots of like strategies and safety on the back end of things to make sure if a message comes from me, it literally came from my phone. So either I sent it or somebody I gave access to my phone sent it, therefore it's my responsibility. And so what it does is it keeps everybody in line. You can also add people like attorneys, like co-parenting therapists to this app, so everybody can see the communication that's happening. And if there are safety issues, whether they're emotional or physical safety issues, having a record that can be used in court typically does keep people in line and really following what we would hope to see as a healthy co-parenting relationship in the future. So those are just a few of the tips that I have as far as communication with co-parents. Get an app. Make sure you're communicating in a business-like manner. Sometimes it also might be helpful to state to the other person, going forward, I will be communicating with you because we're in the business of raising our kids together. This is a business I have a lot of stake in. I hope that you do as well. And then you're just off to the races. There's no more emotion. There's no more craziness, because at the end of the day, getting your emotion out in a message to your co-parents really about the worst thing that you can do. That's not a safe place for you, for them, for the kids, any of it. So you've really got to shift your mindset on that. And it's a hard thing. It's not something that was easy. It took me months and months, which is another reason why I'm recording these videos, so I can hopefully help some of you get ahead of the game from where I was. So co-parenting therapist, great resource. An app where you can chat with your co-parent, also a really good resource. And then making sure that you're using age-appropriate communication with the kids and that you're only sharing what they need to know for the age that they are. And you can do a ton of research on that, or just call a child therapist and book a session for yourself and say, hey, I've got a 7 and a 9-year-old and I'm divorcing. What things should I be sharing? What should I be ready for? I think mental health is a huge resource that you've got to use as a parent during divorce.